Okay, so we are on this book, The 17 Indisputable Laws of Teamwork, and we are on chapter 8, The Bad Apple, the Law of the Bad Apple. Rotten attitudes ruin a team. So I've read the chapter twice on Audible, but I didn't go through in the book and underline. So hopefully it'll jump out at me the things that really stuck. But for me, as I listened, the main thing that I thought was so important to cover today on our call was the story about being on the basketball team, and then looking at the 5 truths about attitudes that clarify how they affect a team and teamwork. And so we're definitely going to look at those 5 things today on this call. And then there's a part that says your best friend or your worst enemy. And then it ends with a teamwork thought, and then becoming a better team leader. I think every chapter he has a little thing at the end about becoming a better team leader. So I love that about this book and the format that he wrote it in, to always be giving us something to think about at the end, how we can become a better team leader. And I know some of you, a lot of you, it looks like will be listening to the replay. A lot of you have said so far that this book, because we're really about halfway through, we're getting close to, after chapter 8, we really are about halfway through. And a lot of you have said that reading this together has helped you to think about the fact that you need a team, and that you are going to be, and you already are becoming, a team leader, and then what kind of team members you're looking for. And I appreciate a lot that this book has helped us to also examine part of having a team is how to deal with people that are not helping your team to grow. Like we've already read about the weak link. And so this today is another issue that can come up when you are adding team members, and that's the law of the bad apple. And so part of what I'm going to incorporate today, um, with God's help, is to help you to have some ideas and some things you can do when you do have a bad apple. So he starts out with growing up, I loved basketball. It all started for me in the 4th grade when I saw a high school basketball game for the first time. I was captivated. Soon after, my dad poured a cement driveway along the side of our house and put a goal up on the garage for me. From that day until I went to college, I could usually be found practicing my shooting and playing pickup games on the small home court. By the time I got to high school, I had become a pretty good player. I started on the junior varsity team as a freshman, and when I was a sophomore, our JV team had a 15-3 record, which was better than that of the varsity. We were proud of that, maybe a little too proud. I say that because of something that happened during my sophomore year. One of the traditions on the team was that our coach, Don Neff, would give Ohio State basketball tickets to some of the players who had performed especially well during the season. Those players were almost always seniors, and they were always on the varsity. But that year, I was one of the players offered Buckeye tickets. What was my response? I was grateful and humbled by Coach Neff's recognition. No,
No,
I
was
told
I?
him I thought
Yeah.
that he should let the JV play the varsity for all the tickets. Needless to say, he never allowed that game to be played. The next year, critics who followed high school basketball in Ohio thought our team had a chance to win the state championship in our division. I guess they looked at the players who would return as seniors from the previous year's varsity team and saw the talent that would be moving up from the JV. And they figured we would be a powerhouse. And we did have a lot of talent. How many high school teams in the late 1960s could say that all but a couple of players on the team could dunk the ball? But the season turned out far different from everyone's expectations. So then it talks about how it goes from bad to worse. Do you want to talk a little bit about that or read some of that, Karen?
Sure. Um, from the beginning of the season, the team suffered problems. There were two of us juniors on the varsity who had the talent to start for the team, John Thomas, who was the team's best rebounder, and me, the best shooting guard. We thought playing time would be based strictly on ability, and we figured we deserved our place on the team. The seniors, who had taken a back seat to the previous year's seniors, thought we should be made to pay our dues and wait. What began as a rivalry between the JV and the varsity the year before turned into a war between the juniors and the seniors. When we scrimmaged at practice, it was the juniors against the seniors. In games, the seniors wouldn't pass to the juniors and vice versa. We judged our success not by whether the team won or lost, but by whether the junior stats were better than those of the seniors. If we outshot, outpassed, and outrebounded the seniors, then we thought we had won the game regardless of the outcome against our opponent. The battles became so fierce that before long the juniors and seniors wouldn't even work together on the court during games. Coach Neff had to platoon us. The seniors would start, and when a substitution became necessary, he'd put out not one, but five juniors in the game. We became two teams on one roster. I don't remember exactly who started the rivalry that split our team, but I do remember that John Thompson and I embraced it early on. I've always been a leader, and I did my share of influencing other team members. Unfortunately, I have to confess that I led the juniors in the wrong direction. What started as a bad attitude in one or two players made a mess of the situation for everyone. By the time we were in the thick of our schedule, even the players who didn't want to take part in the rivalry were affected. The season was a disaster. In the end, we finished with a mediocre record and never came close to reaching our potential. It goes to show you rotten attitudes ruin a team. That's the law of the bad apple.
Okay. So, he has to take responsibility for
Mhm,
his part. And so that's a good thing about, out of the bad. But the effect of what happened
mhm,
between the juniors and the seniors
right.
was really catastrophic. So he says, from this experience, I learned that talent is not enough to bring success to a team. Of course, you need talent. My friend Lou Holtz, the outstanding college football coach, observed, you've got to have great athletes to win. You can't win without good athletes, but you can lose with them. But it also takes much more than talented people to win. My high school teammates were loaded with talent, and if they were enough, we could have been state champions, but we were also loaded with rotten attitudes. You know which won the battle between talent and attitude in the end. Perhaps that is why, to this day, I understand the importance of a positive attitude and have placed such a strong emphasis on it for myself, for my children as they were growing up, and for the teams that I lead. Years ago, I wrote something about attitude for the winning attitude. I'd like to share it with you. Attitude. It is the advanced man of our true selves. Its roots are inward, but its fruit is outward. It is our best friend or our worst enemy. It is more honest and more consistent than our words. It is an outward look based on past experiences. It is the thing which draws people to us or repels them. It is never content until it is expressed. It is the librarian of our past. It is the speaker of our present. It is the prophet of our future. Wow. So, attitude is like super important. Good attitudes among players do not guarantee a team's success, but bad attitudes guarantee it's failure. The following 5 truths about attitudes clarify how they affect a team and teamwork. So, thank you for bearing with us as we read through those first few few pages, because this story, I think, illustrates so well why attitude is critical. And, in Ignite Team, with it being around for, over 9 years, of course, we've had to face good and bad attitudes at times. I mean, even in myself, I've had to face my own attitudes and call my own bad attitudes out. And in reading this book, some of you have confessed some things on this call. And so I think overall, the key to this is being willing to be honest and also being willing to be coachable. And for me, when I'm coaching someone and I reach a line with them where I am coaching them and I am talking with them, and they say things like, I'm just not excited about that. And it's something big that we're doing as a team. Um, you know, sometimes there's a time to listen, but sometimes there's a time that is a drawing line in the sand. And if, I've bought into a mentor and someone isn't excited about that, and that mentor is a 7, 8, 9 figure earner and they've proven they know what they're doing, then that's a drawing line. Like, at that point, I can't help you. And so there's things that are going to happen as you coach people on your team that you're going to have to draw a line, and you're going to have to say, well, their attitude doesn't meet our team's goals. And we have to be honest with our emotions. Of course, I'm going to miss that person, or I'm going to grieve their attitude. I wish it was different. But a lot of these principles apply, and we've probably already applied them in our family, in raising a family. A lot of us have homeschooled, or we have children. All our children have, special needs, whether they're diagnosed special needs or not, right? And we have to address our children's attitudes. We have to address attitudes in our marriage. Sometimes things happen in a church. Maybe you faced attitudes, rotten apples in a church situation, or maybe you faced this in an employer, somewhere you've worked, where there was an employer employee situation. At this stage of life, you've probably seen some bad attitudes. Even when you look back on your time in school, elementary school, high school, what there usually was somebody in the class that the teacher was having to deal with. And did it disrupt the whole room? Did it keep you
Sure.
from getting to learn, even keep you from getting to do something fun? I can remember teachers who would punish the whole class for what one person did. And so I don't know that that was right or wrong, but it is an illustration that bad apples do affect the whole barrel, and they have to be dealt with. One thing that Brooke Hemingway taught me when I was coaching with her is avoidance is not a strategy. Have you ever heard her say that? Avoidance is not a strategy. And so that echoes in my brain. And I'm guilty. I do avoid sometimes, and I have to make myself be like, okay, avoidance is not a strategy. What do you need to do, Darlene, to get in motion and deal with what's happening? Um, and so, another book that's really good, that I've started rereading, I've read it before, but it's been quite a while, is called Safe People, and it's by William Henry Cloud. And I read it years ago. It's probably already been close to 10 years ago, maybe. Um, but probably a little less, because I wasn't in Plexus in 2015. I started in 2016 and I was already doing Plexus when I read it. So it might be 8 years ago or something. But Safe People by William Henry Cloud, it is a really good book to teach you and me what the guidelines are for who is safe to be around, and in a relationship with, and who you may need to draw a line with. And it really gets down. It has a lot of scripture in it, so I love that about that book. And it gets pretty specific. So that's another great book if you are trying to learn like how to distinguish people you should have a closer relationship with and people that you should distance yourself more. It doesn't mean, one thing I think sometimes we think, especially me, is that maybe you have to cut someone off, or sometimes people think they have to divorce a spouse that's just not lining up with their attitudes. um, it may be somebody in your family that you think, well, I'm not going to spend time with them anymore. But
Yes.
you don't have to be that harsh. You can just distance yourself and set some boundaries, but not completely lose the relationship. So um, let's move on. Did you have anything you wanted to comment, Karen?
I just, how do you do that if it's your husband? So
Well,
he predominantly, when it comes to attitudes, predominantly he has he leans more towards the negative. Now, there recently I came up to him and made some comment, and he called me out on it. It was a negative comment that I was making, and I was like, wasn't expecting that. I was kind of expecting he would just go with the flow with my negativity and then we could be in it together. And he nipped it in the bud.
squashed it.
But yeah, but usually it's mostly around driving. He's just very is very, very negative around driving. And so we get in the car and we go anywhere with them and it's tension for everybody. But so what do you do when it's your husband and the boundaries are,
Well, number one,
limit?
pray. Pray for him. Pray for, you know, what you can't change, what's not in your control. And then
Okay.
think about what you can do for yourself, because you can only control yourself in that situation. So maybe have some earphones on, something you're going to listen to, or if you can address it and say, look, when we're driving, have you ever noticed that you tend to be negative? He may not have noticed it. It may be subconscious, even though it's coming out of his mouth conscious. He may not have noticed, like, every time he's driving, it tends to be.
Okay.
So, I mean, talking with him about it, um, especially in your case, because I know your husband is a safe person, and you're
Yes.
able to talk to him about things, um, and so and without him abusing you some way.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
that's good. But for in case somebody's listening to this replay, that you do have to think about that. That would be another boundary line. And then after you've talked to him, you've prayed about it, then that's when you can take action. Then when you put your earbuds in so you can listen to music or a book or podcast or something, then he knows like why you're doing that, because,
Okay.
if he chooses to keep being negative, then you can set a boundary. I know an older woman whose husband listened to, I don't know, I, I don't remember if it was the news or, anyway, he watched stuff on TV she just didn't want to hear. And so she put her headphones on a lot to listen to books or listen to soft music while she read, or she would still be in the room sitting with him in the evenings, but she created her own space that would be more positive by
Oh, okay.
doing some different actions that created her own space in the same room. So there's
Okay. That's really
always
good.
something we can do. Um,
I know we're going to keep going. I really am hoping that you will expound a little bit more on if you have this person in your team, how you do create boundaries, because reading it, I don't know how you take somebody out of your team. I don't know how you do it.
well,
I'm looking forward to you.
you're not going to always take them out of your team. Sometimes
Oh,
you step back, like if you're spending time coaching them and then
yes.
they tell you, I'm not on the same page with you, then if they don't already step back from coaching with you, which they may say, no, I don't want a coaching call this week, or I'll let you know when I need a coaching call again. They may step back, but if they don't, then that's when you have a conversation to say, the direction that I'm going, I don't see you, doing your homework assignments. So when you're ready, I'm here for you.
What happens if
And
it has nothing to do with that? It has nothing to do with them investing in their business or uh, that they're coachable. What happens if they're coachable, but they're that rotten apple? They're the they're coming to
I still think the same thing that I've said is going to be
pray.
the way to address it, because a rotten apple, you may have someone who stays on your team, and
Hmm.
they may even still share, post, message people, but it's not going they're not going to keep growing if they don't address their attitude.
Okay.
And even if it seems like they're growing or seems like they're stable, at some point, the damage of the attitude, the lack of willingness to grow internally and
Hmm.
raise their leadership lid through the things that you're doing to coach them and help them develop as a leader, that negative attitude is going to show up in their numbers. And so the way that you address it is by you have to draw a boundary line. And for me, when in how I grow people is through messaging, connecting with them in the DMs, offering them a coaching call, and them showing up on the calls that I host, even the group calls. That is, they know, because I do an onboarding when I'm working with someone to grow their business, and they know what I define what I'm looking for. And so I ask people, if you're not going to be here, message me, let me know. If you're not going to be here, I understand. Make an effort to be here consistently. But if something comes up, a doctor's appointment that you just couldn't do on Wednesday, or, a time not when we don't have a group call, which there's a whole bunch of time we don't have a group call in the week, then let me know, message.
Right.
And if they quit doing those things, then that is them letting me know, hey, they are slowing down. They are
Okay.
changing their priorities. And
Okay.
so, looking at where you have defined what you expect, making that reasonable, and then when that isn't being met, addressing it in a kind
Okay.
way,
Okay.
but talking about it and saying, look, I'm here for you when you're ready, but this is what I see.
Okay.
Does that help?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. All right, so the five truths we're going to talk about, and we have just about 25 minutes left. And so, number one, attitudes have the power to lift up or tear down a team. So he talks about the winner's edge that Dennis Waitley wrote, that he stated the real leaders in business, in the professional community, in education, in government, and in the home also seem to draw upon a special cutting edge that separates them from the rest of society. The winner's edge is not a gifted birth in a high IQ or in talent. The winner's edge is in attitude, not aptitude. And I was thinking about this even one time, a millionaire that Dawn and I actually worked with in a different network marketing business. Um, a multimillionaire, somebody very successful in network marketing. He was short. He was a short man. And he was like, he would say this from time to time in his talks from stage or whatever. He would say, I wasn't born to be naturally a gifted basketball player because I'm a short man. He's like, sometimes you are not born with that gift. But I've thought about that. I don't know why. Maybe because I'm a short lady. And I'm like, but if he had decided that he wanted to play basketball, he could have practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced and got coached. And maybe, there would still be people better that it was easier for, but he could have probably developed the
Right.
talent. He could have developed skills that would have made up for his lack of height or his lack of giftedness. He could. So, when we think about this attitude, to me, that's an illustration of if he had decided and he really wanted it and he had a positive attitude and he put in the hours and the hard work and the money to get
Hmm.
coached and all of that, that attitude could win out over talent, over aptitude, and
Hmm.
give him a winner's edge where he might could be good enough that he was wanted on a team, a winning team. So I think that is, it's almost funny to think about, but it's also encouraging to think about that what we don't have in natural ability, whatever area that is, because don't we all, think about like sometimes that maybe I don't know the right people, or maybe maybe I, like my chiropractor, he was born poor. He was born into like the ghetto, and his father wasn't around. He was raised by a single mom. They didn't have a lot, and yet he was the kind of person that he pulled himself up by his own bootstraps, and he ended up, he was really smart, so he was invited to go to school at is it Juilliard? That's the music
Oh,
school in
yes,
the
I think so.
Northeast. He went to Juilliard when he was like 11. So that was something he got a break, but that doesn't automatically make you be a success in life either, because
Mhm.
he's not playing music now. He's a chiropractor.
Right.
I mean, he does play music. He does play a guitar and he's in a band, but he's not like, you know, part of a band that's what he does for his money.
Right.
Um, but when we hear stories of people who didn't have the greatest start in life, they were born poor or born, you know, raised by, no father, just circumstances that are hard to overcome sometimes. And yet it's like, if and I think even in kids raised by a single mom, when the single mom has a great attitude and
Mhm.
she teaches her son or daughter, like, this is for you, this is not against you. um Actually, at lunch yesterday, most of the women in my tops group are like 80. They're all older women and they have so much wisdom, and a lot of them were saying that coming up hard in life, because they remember the Great Depression, and
Mhm.
they were born either not too far away from that time period. Um, and they're like, growing up hard helps develop good character. And so, a lot of times, and one man at the table was saying some of his friends that had it easier, they, their lives didn't turn out as well. Actually, the personal problems that they had, even if they had money, the personal problems they had were multiplied because not having hardship to develop strong character and grit had made them give up on some things that these people, like that
Mhm.
man was there with his wife and they had been married over 60 years,
Mm.
61 years. So, when we look at how our attitudes have the power to lift up or tear down, both within ourselves, but also that affects our team. It's so, so
Sure.
true. So there's a little chart that's in the book, if you've only got the Audible, that talks about attitude and aptitude. No, it says abilities plus attitudes equals results. So abilities plus attitude, and I'll take a picture of this so that you can see it inside the group. I'll do that now because I forgot last week. Um, so it says Great talent plus rotten attitudes equals a bad team. Great talent plus bad attitudes equals an average team. Great talent plus average attitudes equals a good team. Great talent plus good attitudes equals a great team. So we're going for great talent, which can be developed. We're going for
Mhm.
good attitudes, and that's going to equal a great team. And those are the kind of people we're looking for when we prospect. And I think that's part of how we mature, right? As we keep doing what we do in our IPA, we learn from experience
Mhm.
the type of person that we're looking for. And we learn to recognize red flags when we're even in an initial conversation. We see patterns in how people act and what they do and what they ask for and different things, even in a prospecting conversation that may make us decide, I'm not going to follow up with them. That's not going to lead to good things. And you may even notice things on their wall that you're like, I'm marking that
Mhm.
name out, or I'm not going to write it down on my Hot 25 because I don't have alignment. You see attitude issues that are in their posts. Um, so, if you want outstanding results, you need good people with great talent and awesome attitudes. When attitudes go up, so does the potential of the team. When attitudes go down, the potential of the team goes with it. Any comments on that, Karen?
Mm-mm. That
Okay.
is pretty clear.
Do you want to read number two? Some
Sure.
of it and talk about it a little bit.
An attitude compounds when exposed to others. Several things on a team are not contagious: talent, experience, willingness to practice. But you can be sure of one thing: attitude is catching. When someone on a team is teachable and his humility is rewarded by improvement, others are more likely to display similar characteristics. When a leader is upbeat in the face of discouraging circumstances, others admire that quality and want to be like her. When a team member displays a strong work ethic and begins to have a positive impact, others imitate him. People become inspired by their peers. People have a tendency to adopt the attitudes of those they spend time with, to pick up on their mindset, beliefs, and approaches to challenges. The story of Roger Bannister is an inspiring example of the way attitudes often compound. During the first half of the 20th century, many sports experts believed that no runner could run a mile in less than 4 minutes. And for a long time, they were right. But then, on May 6, 1954, British runner and university student Roger Bannister ran a mile in 3 minutes 59.4 seconds during a meet in Oxford. Less than 2 months later, another runner, Australian John Landry, also broke the 4 minute barrier. Then suddenly dozens, then hundreds of others broke it. Why? Because the best runners' attitudes changed. They began to adopt the mindset and beliefs of their peers. Bannister's attitude and actions compounded when exposed to others. His attitude spread. Today, every world class runner who competes at that distance can run a mile in less than 4 minutes. Attitudes are contagious.
Yep. Bad attitudes compound faster than good ones. I think this is related, so we'll keep going.
Yeah.
There's only one thing more contagious than a good attitude, and that's a bad attitude. For
Hmm.
some reason, many people think it's chic to be negative. I suspect they think it makes them appear smart or important. And so, one of the things I talk about a lot in my coaching is that people, there's a lot of different things that are false power, and anger or even addiction to sadness, I'm learning this year, are false power. People
Huh.
think that if they practice these things as a habit, that they will be more powerful, they'll get more attention, they'll get more of what they need. And it can manifest different ways, like people having excessive surgeries so that they'll be cared for, because it's the only time they get attention in their family,
Oh,
the level of attention that they want. And sometimes people in our business, they don't want to get well. You meet people who you offer products to, you may even help them get started. And before long, usually in that first 30 days, because our products really work, they're telling you, I just don't like the taste of this, or I just don't like to swallow capsules, or
right.
some excuse like that, that if they really wanted to get well, they would be willing to overlook that. They would find a way. And people who do want to get well, I've seen find a way. They'll just do a drink as a shot. They'll put a minimal amount of water in there and just take
Mm-hmm.
it as a shot because they know they need what's in it. Switching from a drink to a capsule, our balance is very similar to Slim. It's not exactly the same. Slim is still better. But if you have someone who just has terrible acid reflux and they drink the Slim and they're like, this gives me heartburn. I just can't drink it. Or maybe there's somebody whose gut is so poor, drinking liquids makes them throw up. I
Mm-hmm.
know I have friends like that. Um, so they could take balance instead for a little while till their gut heals enough to start doing the Slim. Same thing with, some people, the Slim gives them a heart palpitation. Well, if they work on healing their gut, and taking magnesium and strengthening their muscles and getting their muscles healed, then a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times over time, they can start to drink a little bit of Slim and maybe a little more and a little more. That's someone who wants to get well. I've seen people who took Probio 5 and at first they couldn't do a whole capsule, even half a capsule. They had to open it and sprinkle a little bit on yogurt or applesauce. And then
Mm-hmm.
they would do that amount for a while and just gradually keep increasing it till they could do a whole capsule and they could just swallow the capsule. And they could slowly increase until they worked up to even the dose of 4 that's like a medicinal grade to kill back candida. So where there's a will, there's a way. And but some people, they they just get something out of staying sick or something
Mm-hmm.
out of being negative and having a bad attitude, and they're kind of addicted to having that bad attitude, and they don't want to change. And so this book says, I suspect they think it makes them appear smart or important. But the truth is that a negative attitude hurts rather than helps the person who has it. And it also hurts the people around him. So, another thing that I've done is if I had someone who was getting on calls, and I've heard other Jules talk about this, if they are getting on your calls and they're being negative, you don't have to invite them to the call. You could change the link and not share it with them, even if you had to go to that extreme. So your team has to be protected. This says a wise baseball manager once remarked that he never allowed the positive players to room with the negative ones on the road. When he created the team's room assignments, he always put the negative ones together so that they couldn't poison anyone else. To see how quickly and easily an attitude or mindset can spread, just think about this story from Norman Cousins. Once during a football game, a doctor at the first aid station treated 5 people for what he suspected might be food poisoning. Basically, this goes on to reveal, just to shorten it for time, that it wasn't the food they thought it was. People had stopped before the game at a restaurant and had some bad potato salad, I think, at that restaurant. It was like a deli on the way to the game. And the sufferers found out that it wasn't from any food at the stadium. And and it just goes to show, this story goes to show that if wrong information is told, it can do damage, and negative information spreads quickly. I just think
Mm-hmm.
it's because the devil is loose, and God allows him to have a certain amount of leeway. It sort of tests all of us to see, am I going to feed into the negative, or am I going to be like, well, wait, that might or might not be true. So I'm not going to say anything. If we are the kind of person that wants to build up and not tear down, and there's proverbs about that, and even I think specifically to women, that if we're the kind of person that is building up, that people are going to want to be around. We're not going to be a nag. We're not going to be negative. We're not going to gossip. We're not going to slander. We're
Hmm.
going to be slow to speak. We're going to be quick to listen. And we're going to be very careful what kind of information we spread. One rule of thumb is that if you have something negative to say, it needs to go to your upline. You never spread anything negative cross line or down line. And take it to your coaching call. Do it in private in your coaching call. Don't ask negative questions on a group call. That is just bad form. Because remember what the devil's two biggest tools are, it's doubt. So you can ask a question that causes doubt in everybody else's mind. Some questions need to be asked in private. And that's an important rule. And then so doubt and discouragement are the devil's two greatest tools that he uses over and over. They're really worn out. You might have heard the story of the devil and his two tools.
No,
Um,
I haven't. Can you do
his
you have time to tell that?
No, I'm not going to tell it right now, but
Oh,
it's a good one. It's a good one. It's been told lots of times.
so it's just
But
called The Devil and
I
his
don't know if
two
it's called that, but that is the big theme in there, is that the devil's two tools that are
two
just
tools.
worn out because he uses
Okay.
them all the time, is
Okay.
doubt and discouragement.
Okay, I'll
So
look it up.
it's important that what we say is encouraging and belief building. And if you have something to say that's going to cause doubt or discouragement, that needs to be asked privately with your
Okay.
upline. Um, or if you heard something on a call with the leader, DM that to them to ask about it. Um, okay, so it says that number four, attitudes are subjective. So identifying a wrong one can be difficult. Have you ever interacted with someone for the first time and suspected that his attitude was poor, yet you were unable to put your finger on exactly what was wrong? I believe many people have that experience. The reason people doubt their observations about others' attitudes is that attitudes are subjective. Someone with a bad attitude may not do anything illegal or unethical, yet his attitude may be ruining the team just the same. So, as a leader, praying for discernment, um, and when a red flag is coming up, that's the Holy Spirit. Listen to that whisper in your head, don't just ignore it. This says people always project on the outside how they feel on the inside. Attitude is really about how a person is. That overflows into how he acts. And he has a few points in here. He says, allow me to share with you common rotten attitudes that ruin a team so you can recognize them for what they are. This is something you would want to underline or hit the bookmark button on your Audible. An inability to admit wrongdoing. It's so important that we are willing to admit when we've made a mistake. And that's something that I have to work on because in my birth family, um, I'm just going to say what it was. On my father's side, there was a lack of forgiveness. So if there's a lack of forgiveness in the family, can you take the blame for anything? Nope, because you're not going to be forgiven. So there, you never can. Blame always has to get deferred. Well, subconsciously, I saw that practice, and so I learned some of that. So I've had part of my recovery over the years I've worked on learning myself and where are my character flaws I've had to come to learn. I am not as quick as I need to be. I'm working on getting quicker at saying, I made a mistake. I made a mistake. That was me. I did something wrong. And I that's one of the things I love about some of the leaders that I'm around is they are quick to say, I did that. That was me. I did it. And I admire that so much because it takes a lot of courage. It takes, you cannot, you have to be honest with yourself first. You can't gloss it over in your own mind and be defensive and have a reason. And that's where my brain just naturally tends to go because of how I grew up. And so that slows down coming to admit, oh, I made a mistake. That was me. I did it. And so we have to be willing and then as quick as we can. One of the things we teach in recovery is be quick to admit when I am wrong. But this says having an ability to admit I'm wrong, and it says it in the opposite. What will ruin the team is an inability to admit wrongdoing. So, what would be the opposite? Be willing. It says, have you ever spent time with people who never admit they're wrong? It's painful. Nobody's perfect, but someone who thinks he is does not make an ideal teammate. His wrong attitude will always create conflict. Next is failure to forgive. And to me, this is one that will just totally break down um, any organization. There has to be forgiveness. I mean, without forgiveness, is any organization going to last? A family, a church, business? No, we have people are going to make mistakes. And one thing I've even learned in friendships is like, okay, we'll see how long this lasts. I mean, that's one of the tests of a friendship is like when someone makes a mistake, is are both parties going to be able to forgive and still love and
Mm,
still want to spend time together? Because sometimes somebody will say they forgive, but then they pull back and they quit calling, quit wanting to get together, quit loving on that other person in action.
mm,
So we have to be willing to forgive. So failure to forgive is one that will tear a team down. Next is petty jealousy. An attitude that really works against people is the desire for equality that feeds petty jealousy. So we have to be okay that other people have more talent. Somebody, because of that talent, may be called on more than us to use that talent. They may be a better performer in an area. Like some people are gifted speakers and some people are better one on one, and that's okay. The last is the disease of me, and it says, or no, that isn't the last. The
mm,
next one is the disease of me, and that is just being I, arrows in. That a team cannot grow if it's arrows in. A person is arrows in. A critical spirit. We've seen a critical spirit before, and that just tears people down, right? Very quickly. And then a desire to hog all the credit. So, a desire to hog all the credit when somebody else even actually did whatever it was and deserves the credit and the spotlight and to be praised. If someone is a credit hog, then that also is a bad attitude that is the result of, it says here in the book, that it's a bad attitude that's the result of selfishness and it will tear the team down. So these are things to watch out for. Number 5 in our 5 is rotten attitudes left alone ruin everything. So we already said we cannot avoid. We just absolutely cannot practice avoidance. Avoidance is not a strategy. So hang on one second. Okay. So wrapping up, this says, I want to skip over to the teamwork thought at the end. And it says becoming, which I mean, we were pretty much right there. Um, Becoming a better team member. The first place to start when it comes to attitude is
Yourself.
yourself. That's the only person I can control.
Mm,
How are you doing? For example, do you think the team wouldn't be able to get along without you? Secretly, or not so secretly, believe that recent team successes are really attributable to your personal efforts, not the work of the whole team? Do you keep score when it comes to the praise and perks handed out to other team members? Do you have a hard time admitting when you make a mistake? Do you bring up past wrongs, whether you do it in your mind or even out loud, to teammates? Or do you believe that you are being grossly underpaid? And if you could place a check next to any of these, then you need to check your attitude. Talk to your teammates or your upline and find out if your attitude is doing damage to the team. Talk to your leader. And if you really think that your pay is inequitable, you need to talk it out with your employer and find out where you stand. In this, and what we're doing, if you're not getting paid what you think you should be paid, you have to look at, am I doing the work? And usually, I want to say always, when I can remember way back when I'd gone, like, I can't remember if I think I was a silver and my products were paying for my order. They were paying for my triplex back then. And my pay had gone down a little bit. And I can distinctly remember someone I had meant to talk to and I didn't. And I got into action and I was like, I'm going to talk to more people. And I did that. And the next month, my paycheck was back up, it had grown. So sometimes our attitude has to do with our pay, and we just have to look at our actions and say, am I doing the work? Um, but this says anytime a relationship is unequal, it cannot last, whether you are giving more than you get or getting more than you deserve. Um, so, becoming a better team leader, if you think you have a bad apple on your team, you need to take the person aside and discuss the situation with that person. Doing it the right way is important. Take the high road. As you approach that person, share what you have observed, give them the benefit of the doubt. Assume that your perception might be wrong and you want clarification. If you have several people with bad attitudes, start with the ringleader. If it truly is your perception and the team is not being hurt, then you haven't done any damage and you have smoothed the relationship between you and the other person. However, if it turns out that your perception is correct and the person's attitude is the problem, give him clear expectations and an opportunity to change. Then hold that person accountable. If they change, it's a win for the team. If they won't, remove them from the team. You cannot allow that person or group to remain, because you can be sure the rotten attitude will ruin the team.
I have
So,
a quick question.
yep.
On
And then
page
I'll go with that.
114, under becoming a better team member, the second box, I'm missing some of the words. So secretly or not so secretly believe that, and then I don't know what it says.
Oh, it didn't print out.
It says to believe that RE space ENT. I don't,
Oh, let me find that part right here. It says secretly or not so secretly, believe that recent team successes are really attributable to your personal efforts, not the
okay,
work of
I'm
the
missing
whole
the
team.
C. I was missing the C. I was like, I don't know what that word is. Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
You're welcome. Well, thank you for being on the call today. I hope that this was a blessing. It's a hard subject to talk about, it's a hard subject to deal with, but in the end, we have to deal with rotten apples. So,
Mhm.
and if you have, as your team grows, you know that as you have a bigger and bigger team, these things are going to come up inevitably. So, All right.
Thank you.
Love you.
Bye. Love you too.
Bye.